Syrophoenician woman. Mark chapter 7 from verse 24 to 30. Now let me read the Bible verse. From there, he arose and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered the house and wanted no one to know it. But it could not be hidden, for a woman whose young daughter had an unclean spirit heard about him and came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she kept asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. But Jesus said to her, "Let the children be filled first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." And she answered and said to him, "Yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs under the table eat from the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For this saying, go your way, and the demon has gone out of your daughter." And when she had come to her house, she found the demon gone and her daughter laying on the bed. As I was reading, the account of this Syrophoenician woman and her encounter with Jesus, I initially found myself confused as to why God referred to her as a dog, as a dog. So I started making my own research. I decided to listen to other great men of God that have seasoned teachers of the word, and also I came across some online articles of feminist Bible group who criticized Jesus and they labeled him as racist and among other unprintable names. So one question that came to my mind was that if this Syrophoenician woman, after Jesus addressed her in a parable and referenced her and compared her to a dog, if the Syrophoenician woman herself did not take offense, she wasn't offended, then why should I be offended? Why should I cry more than the bereaved? The person that Jesus referred to as a dog was not even annoyed about it. Then why should I be the one to be a social justice warrior for the woman? And in fact, the woman got the healing she wanted for her daughter. And because she did not choose to argue and protest God's word, she chose mercy over offense, and her daughter's healing mattered more to her than winning an argument or defending her pride. So as our response shows that he hearts that prioritized faith and humility over need to be right. Now let us understand who the Syrophoenicians are. If you should understand who the Syrophoenicians are, maybe we'll be able to understand why God made that parable of let's feed the children first before giving the bread to the dogs. So Syrophoenicians, they are referred to a person from ancient region of Syrophoenicia, a coastal area that included Phoenicia, which is the modern day Lebanon, within the Roman province of Syria. The people of this region were Phoenician descent and were considered Gentiles. They are non-Jewish. They are idol worshippers, and in the Jewish context of that time. And Jezebel, if you are familiar with Jezebel, Jezebel was a Phoenician princess from Sidon and one of the major Phoenician cities, which makes her ethnically Phoenician. This places her within the ethnic group of this same Syrophoenician woman we're talking about that met Jesus. If you are familiar with the story of Jezebel, then maybe you begin to understand the historical and the spiritual weight behind why Jesus referred to the Syrophoenician woman as a dog. And in fact, Jesus wasn't talking about the wild dogs. He was talking about all these little home dogs like these chihuahuas and normal domestic dogs that we have in the house. Then, from another perspective, the Jewish labeling of people from Syrophoenicia as Gentiles and idol worshippers has become a rootly and a deeply rooted tradition within the Jewish community. However, Jesus did not simply dismiss or ignore this reality, especially in the light of what he taught in the Bible verse we just finished, the one of defilement comes from within, where it teaches about traditions contradicting God's commandments. At the same time, we must be careful to take God's teaching of defilement that comes from within out of context. Because when I was listing things, traditions that we place above God was I mentioned something concerning how people dressed or how people the different type of hairstyles they make. Now, if Jesus said, "Do not place traditions above above God's words," don't look at the outward appearance, but the art. But she saw the Syrophoenician woman, and is a Jewish tradition to see the Syrophoenicians as Gentiles, as idol worshippers. But he still plays that tradition. He did not throw the tradition away. So, in as much as we should not place tradition over God's word, we must also have discerning spirit to know what is holy and what is unholy. Because many people will be like, "Oh, Jesus said, Jesus said it's not what you eat or drink that defiles you." Then you now, from this Bible study, you go and start drinking. I did not tell you to go and start drinking. Even though Jesus says it's not what you take in or you eat that defiles you, that's not a license for you to go and sin. And the connection from within with this humility of the Syrophoenician woman and the first event we treated was that Jesus did not throw that tradition away, but he's only annoyed at people who act overly religious, but their heart is unclean. Did you get? So there are people that they do not act religious and their heart is still not clean. So let us not mix that together. So true obedience still requires discernment, holiness, and alignment with God's words. Now let's return to our story of the Syrophoenician woman, and I have to really be fast because I promised 30 minutes. I did not start on time because of technical issues. So, and we still have one more event to treat. Now let's return to the story of Syrophoenician woman and her humility and faith that brought healing for her daughter. Even after Jesus had used the parable that likened her to a dog, she did not lose her composure or rebuke him, though. Though by human standards, she might felt justified in doing so. Instead, she remained focused on her goal, which is healing her daughter. She had every right to be annoyed. She had every right to tear her shirt and say, "How dare you refer me to a dog? It's only miracle I wanted. I did not say you should come and insult me." But she was more interested in the healing of her daughter than being right. And her response was striking. She said, "Yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs under the table eat from the children's crumbs." Noticing that she still addressed Jesus as Lord. And I was listening to a particular sermon and they said there's probability that this Syrophoenician woman was the first woman to even address Jesus as Lord in the Bible, even though she was a Gentile. So even though she was a Gentile, she was an idol worshiper, she came from the lineage of Jezebel, she still found favor in the sight of God. Why? Because of her humility and her faith. She set aside her pride. She was more interested in healing from Jesus Christ. And from this, I understand that faith and humility they work hand in hand. Pride would have stood in the way of the faith, but if she had been driven by pride, she would have been more concerned about being right than receiving mercy. So now we have to think about are there situations whereby we always want to be right and we ignore what's the bigger picture in that context. So this is what I want us to ponder on in this story of the Syro-Phoenician woman.